Okay, my recording has been started. Okay, so since you were in the training yesterday, I won't recap a ton in terms of the, what do you call it, user registration. So we'll jump straight in to circulation. And since you're the only one here, feel free to jump in with any questions at any point. But let me turn on my screen sharing here and I'll go ahead and share my workflow screen. There we go. Okay. All right, so let me know, are you seeing my workflows okay?
I am, I see it.
Awesome. Okay, so most everything we covered yesterday was in the users group. Today, most things will be in the common tasks group. The first wizard I'll cover is the checkout wizard. And this one you'll notice has a different group of helpers than the display user wizard did. But on this one, you can see, actually, I may move this to a different screen so that it's larger. So let me stop that share and start a new one. Sorry about that. I just realized that that's going to be very small if I put that on my laptop screen. Okay. Okay, so there's the set of helpers. So the first helper, again, is your user search helper, which works just exactly like it did in the display user wizard. If you click on it, it opens a pop-up, and you can use either a keyword search or a browse search, depending on what information you have. You can narrow the search down to the library and search by name or by other indexes. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can pull up one of my test accounts from yesterday. Okay, there we go. So if you try to pull up a user, you can either use your scanner and scan their barcode, you can just type their barcode in, or you can use the search. But in this case, I'm going to use my search, and I'm going to pull up this one that I know has some statuses on it. Okay, so as you can see, this user has some fines on their account, and they also have a note about having returned materials with salami between the pages. So, so it will alert you right away if there are any things on the account that you may need to be concerned about. It will also give you alerts if an account is like about to expire or something. At schools, you're probably not going to see a ton of those, since most schools, I believe, go ahead and put in like graduation, month and year as the expiration date, but every now and then you may catch one that was missed or something like that. But in this case, I have a situation where the user is blocked because their fines are over this library's block limit, and and the note wouldn't necessarily block them, but the note would still potentially display. So I have my options. I can either override this block and go ahead and check out to user, or I can investigate to find out more about, what those fines were on, or I can pay the fines. I'm going to use the investigate function here. And that's just going to pull up that user account. And if I click on this bills tab, I can see the bills broken down, by what bills were on which item. It looks like there was an unpaid processing fee from the other part. This item had apparently been marked as lost and billed to me. And that $1.25 is the processing fee, which hadn't been paid yet. And then there's also a fee for cleaning and a fee for shipping costs, which were added to the account. And I'll show you how to add those types of bills later in this training. But so we say, okay. And then we're back to the screen where I have to either use an override or pay off the bills. I'm going to go ahead and enter the override, which is just the letters RSA. And then that brings me into the account. And now I can proceed with checkouts if I wish, because I've told it, yes, I know it has these bills and I don't care. If I do decide that I want to pay off a portion of these bills, this little helper that's the hand holding the bill is the one that I can use to pay the bills. So on that, if I click that, it just opens up this window where I can put in my bill payment. I can put up a payment for the total amount up at the top, or I can also put in like a portion of the payment up here, or I can pay off individual bills down here below. One reason that you may wish, depending on the types of bills that the user has, to pay the bills individually is say the student came in and, their parents had sent them with a $5 bill to pay off some of their fines or something. I don't even know whether your school charges fines. Some schools do, some schools don't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Only if you've lost the book.
Okay. Well, and this may apply too, because a student, maybe they've lost one, like a small, I don't know, like a highlights magazine that doesn't cost very much, but they've also lost a hardback book that's like $25 or something. So if, like, say their parents sent them in with the exact amount of money for the smaller amount, you probably, in that case, rather than paying it up here, like if I mark the $5 payment up here, it's going to apply the payment to these bills in order. So it'll pay off that $2 and then $3 worth of the $5. So if someone only has the money to pay off a portion of the thing, you probably want to kind of pick and pay off all of, whatever they have enough money for, if it's like a lost item or something. If they just have like, $10 worth of 10 cents here, 10 cents there fines, and they come in with $5, you probably just want to go ahead and put in the $5 up at the top and not mark it for each individual one. It just kind of depends on what the situation is. And you do have a selection of payment types. Ideally, this is customized to the payment types you actually accept at your library. If not, let us know, because we can customize that drop-down menu for you. But otherwise, you will see a huge list of payment types. Mine is not customized because I have to have access to all of them, but you could, narrow it down to just, cancel, cash, forgiven, check, if you want. So, but most of the time, you're probably just taking cash. Or you may be canceling a fine. You may have found the book on your shelf and it was not, in fact, late or something like that. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and cancel these fines since these were all test fines that I had billed to this account. Oh dear. And I have a notification that my internet connection is unstable. So I apologize if I drop out of this training.
Yeah.
I will
I lost you for a second.
Oh no. Yeah, my internet has been a little iffy this morning. So if I do drop out of the training, I will stay in there. I'll be back as soon as I can. So
okay. All right.
But yeah, I am going to go ahead and cancel these fines just because these were all tests. So we'll go ahead and click pay bills. And there we go. And now I can return to checkout. And this person now has a clean bill of health. So in the helpers, though, the next helper, you've got a display user helper if you need to look up a user and see more information about their account. There's also a modify user helper in case you want to, change something on their account, like update an email address, or maybe they've lost a card and you need to issue them a new barcode, things like that. You could also register a new user from this screen. I can't think of too many times that that's easier than it would be just to open, a user registration window, but it is there if you need it. There's also this confirm address, which since schools aren't required to enter addresses, you probably won't get much use out of. And there is the add brief title if you use the add brief title function to enter like ILL materials. You can also open that wizard from there. I'm not going to cover that in this training because it kind of treads into cataloging territory, but there is training available on how to use that if you are someone who needs to use it. This next one is an item search helper. This one, I like to cover it, but it can be a little bit tricky. Not tricky is maybe the wrong word. There are potential problems that it can cause if you use it in the checkout wizard. So let's search for Anne of Green Gables. And I'm going to just search for this at any library. I'm going to do a browse search. Okay. And I'm going to sort by this author field so I can just find the ones by L.M. Montgomery. And I will cover this wizard in greater depth in the holds training. For right now, I'm just kind of using it to find an item. Okay, so let's see. We'll pick one. And if I go into call number description, I can see who owns it and where it is on their shelf and all of that. The thing I like to warn people about is if you're using this to look up items while you're in the checkout wizard, you will have this option at the bottom to check out an item, which is a little bit of a problem because this item is on the shelf at Atkinson while I am, working from home in Norwood. So, but I could just very easily, if I click that, it is checked out to that user. So I just like to warn people that it is relatively easy if, someone comes up and you're checking out some books for them and they go, oh, wait, do you have, the new Captain Underpants? To kind of go, oh, yeah, let me check and click on that to look it up from there. So if you're ever in that situation, I generally kind of recommend instead of, doing that to either finish your checkouts and open a new window, or just go ahead and open an item search and display window. That way, we have had times that library staff has done that and not been paying attention and not noticed that they checked out an item to someone, or has meant to be placing a hold and has checked out the item instead. So I like to cover that sort of as a little bit of a warning. That's not to say there aren't times you might need to look up an item that you don't have in your hands to check it out. Like maybe you're checking some stuff out to discard user because it's been lost for a long time or something like that. You might not have those items and you might need to use that. Just be aware of it when you are doing it. This next little helper, this is a change item ID helper. This can be great if you're checking out an item and the barcode has become damaged or someone's like scribbled on it or something, and you need to issue a new barcode real quick, because all you do with that is you can either look up the item, or if you press cancel, you can scan, enter the existing item ID and then grab a new barcode off your sheet, scan the new ID, and then it just changes that for you real quick. So that way you can put on that, you can replace that damaged barcode if you need to. The next one is a special due date helper. This one is great if for whatever reason your user will not be able to return these items on the regular due date. Like say your books check out for 2 weeks and there's a school assembly on that day 2 weeks from today, and you're not going to be, your regular classes are not going to be coming into the library. So you want to bounce the due dates back to whenever that class is next going to be in the library. You could use this helper to do that. So you could.
Or like staff.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Basically, anytime you don't want to use the regular due date, or like maybe you realize there was like a snow day and an unplanned closure or something. I mean, you would probably not be, you would not know about the snow day, but something has been thrown on the schedule and they won't be coming in on the regular day, and in advance. But yeah, if you click this, there's just a little calendar. And you can just say, okay, the regular due date would be 2 weeks from today, so it'd be the 10th, but I need to give this person an extra week. You can just select that date, click OK, and then you have several options. When I would use this, most of the time I would actually use this from now on, because just when I picture a school setting, you may want to be applying the same due date for the whole class, or for all the books you're going to check out to this teacher, or things like that. And that's going to use that due date for as long as you have this window open. As soon as you close the checkout window, it clears it out, and next time you open your checkouts, it's not going to like keep that stored. But just as long as you have this window open, it'll keep that special due date. You can also do for this user only, like say you want to do it for the teacher, but then when the next student comes up, you want to go back. It'll just be for a while you're checking out to that user. And then the next time they come in, they'll be back to normal and everything. It's just that time. And then for this checkout only, it's just for that one book. So I'm going to click the from now on though. And you'll see that it keeps this statement in there above the identify item field, so you're using that special due date. So now normally you would have a bunch of books in front of you and just, scan your item IDs or type them in however you enter them, and they'll start checking out. Since I am, again, working from home in Norwood, I don't have any books to check out to myself, so I'm going to look another one up in the thing and use that. Let's see, what's another good? We'll do The Little Prince. I love that book. Let me just find one more. I won't do Fond du Lac because that's in transit. We'll do Savannah's. Okay. All right, so I've got a couple of items checked out, and you'll see that that second one did use that special due date, the 17th, which in my case, I'd actually shortened it. You've got this list of checkouts here. If you mouse over the due date, you'll notice that the cursor turns into a little hand. And if I click on that, I get a little bit more information about the item. I can see like what CERC rule that checked out under. I can see the price of the item, author and call number and all that kind of stuff. Also though, if I kind of hover my mouse over it anywhere that it doesn't turn into a hand, I can use my right mouse button and click on it, and I get all these different options. I can, see if there's holds on it. I could return the item from their account. I could add a note to the account if I needed to, like say this user ejected out, and while I'm checking it out, I noticed that there was some damage. I could add an item note that says, stains on front cover, I would just make a note of the damage and the date I noted it. And then that way, when that item's returned, you'll know that that damage was pre-existing when they checked it out and not be worried that that student may have damaged it or something like that. So I won't really add this note because hopefully that item is not in fact stained. But anyway, that's just a handy trick. Almost anywhere in workflows that you get a list of items like this, you can use that right-click function. And it's kind of like the helpers, where it's different depending on what the status of that item is. So it's pretty handy. So I'm going to say check out to new user. And I'm going to pull up the same user here. And you'll notice it still has, because I chose from now on, it still has that special due date. But I can choose the same user again, but you'll notice this time I've got a different set of lists here. I've got current user checkouts. So now that she has some stuff that's already been checked out to her, anything that the user currently has will be checked out there. And then I can keep going and any new checkouts will appear in this list, which is just kind of nice. Workflows, I want to say this is a recent change, but in reality, it was probably about 5 years ago that they added this feature where you can see current user checkouts. If the user has bills, there's also a list of their bills there. And if they have holds, that appears in a list there as well. So you can kind of see everything about a user's account from the checkout screen, which has been a really nice addition. Another thing that is nice, if someone had some stuff already checked out, I don't know what your receipt printer situation is, but if someone like needed a list of things they had checked out before, wanted to refresh their memory on the due date, like now that these are current user checkouts, you can see my options have changed a little bit. But one of the things, oh, I don't have it because I'm not hooked up to a printer. Hang on. Let me tell it I have a receipt printer. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, now that I've told it I have a receipt printer, even though I don't, I have this print checkout slip option. So if you need to like reprint a receipt for someone, you can do it that way. You've got your renewal options. You can, modify the due date. So if you've had a situation where someone needed a special due date and you forgot to enter it initially, you could change that there. You can mark the item lost or missing, which, if you don't want to mark it, well, you might want to mark it missing sometimes. But like if you wanted to bill the user for an item, you could use that mark item lost. There's also a bill user for item. I'll tell you kind of the difference between the two when we get a little further down on the agenda and get into billing. But mark item missing just kind of puts it in a location of missing and takes it off that user's account. And again, the notes and all of that. So that's basically, though, the checkout wizard. Any questions about those?
Nope, I think I've got it.
Okay, awesome. I mean it's mostly pretty straightforward. There's just a few little kind of tricks you can use in there occasionally. And there are the email receipt options as well. If your printer dies, but you still want to send people receipts, or maybe it's a teacher who wants to get an emailed, the list of their checkouts emailed to them instead of having a paper one. I don't know. In this case, since I haven't done any current checkouts, I could email all the checkouts on this person's account to them. So if I click that, since this user doesn't have an email address on their account, it will ask me to enter an email address for them. But if they already have an email address, it'll just automatically email that to whatever's on file. Yeah.
I've tried to do that for staff, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in theory it should send, as long as I know sometimes with schools the security on the email will block things occasionally, but because it probably reads it as if it's coming from like an automated service, and sometimes that can get flagged in spam, but in theory it at least tries to send them an email. All right, so that is checkout. All right. The next wizard, I'll go ahead and cover the discharge wizards. So the first one is just your regular discharge wizard. You've got just a few helpers here. You have just the item search, because sometimes you do have to return something that you may not physically have in hand. You have the change item ID, the pay bills, and then just a print the user info thing. But I'm going to go ahead and return this book that I didn't really have to start with. So I'll click on that. And this is going to be a good example because it's going to be in transit to Havana. So basically, anytime an item needs to be sent somewhere and you're returning it, it may say, send to this library for a hold, and then it'll pop up with a little bit of information about who it's on hold for. But a lot of the time, you're just sending things back to a home library to be shelved, so it'll just tell you who to route those to, and then you've got the library code, so then you can look up on the user list to see what that library's full name is, make your label, and send it off. An important thing to know, though, is once this window has popped up, as far as the computer is concerned, that item is on its way. So like, if you are like, oh no, I don't want to send that out, I need to keep that here for something, like maybe it's your own item and a teacher's doing a unit on, Laura Ingalls Wilder and it's trying to send it to another library to fill a hold, you might not want to send that to fill the hold because you're about to check it out to another teacher. If you click that X, it'll close that window. It's not going to change the status. The computer is still going to think it's coming to Havana. So if you ever are in that situation, though, just go ahead and click OK. And if I pull up that item info, its status.
I think this actually happened. This exact same thing just happened to the aide here in the library.
Oh, yeah.
And it was she didn't know it came up like that, and she clicked to get rid of it, and then it said it was on its way, and we're trying to check it to a student. So thank you. I had to get help, but yeah, okay.
But yeah, I'll cover kind of what to do. So in this situation, when you look it up in the thing, you can see it says it's in transit.
In transit.
So if it is something you didn't want to send, or you're trying to check it out, sometimes you'll also see notices like that when you're trying to check things out. It'll say this item has holds, please transit to wherever.
Yep.
In that case, basically, if it's someone who wants to check it out, you can just go ahead and check it out to them. It will show up with an error message, just like this. It'll say item in transit, cannot charge. You just type that RSA override, click release item, and it just checks it out to them. We do not ever expect you to, tear a book out of a child's hands and say, I'm sorry, I have to send this across the state. You can't have it. That is our policy, is that the user that's in the building gets to have it first. The only exception to that is if they've already had it for several weeks and it's a renewal, we do kind of ask that, like, okay, it's a hold, don't override the hold, because someone has been waiting for it and that user has had a turn. That sort of thing. That's kind of the only time that we ask you not to do that, is if it's a renewal.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, you can do, if it's not a situation where someone wants to check it out, but like you may have a situation where you're returning something and you've noticed that it's damaged and you're probably going to be removing it from the collection, so you don't want to send it to some random library with damage. In that case, a lot of libraries create various in-house use cards. So like they'll have like maybe a problem card or a missing pieces card. Like if you have, sets that might be, you might have most things, but you're waiting on like the set of flashcards, or, a DVD that's missing one disc or something like that. So you might have like a problem card or a missing pieces card. You might have a mending card. You might have a display card if you're doing like a special themed display. So basically, you can have, there's not really a limit on how many in-house uses cards you could have. You don't want to go too bonkers, because then it could be hard to keep up with. But as long as you just have, kind of a manageable amount and keep up with what's checked out to them, you can check those items out to that card instead of sending them for transit. I'd recommend having at least like just a generic problem card, if nothing else. That way, if something does come up and you can't send something out, you can check it out to that. Another thing, a lot of libraries have we suggest that you have a no transit card, and that's another one that you can just kind of generically use as a thing to check things out to if you're not able to send them. So that's basically kind of how to handle that when it does pop up. But basically, you just want to do something in the computer so the computer knows that item isn't coming. Because if the computer thinks that's coming, then it won't put it on other libraries' pick lists, and then that user might never get it because it's waiting for this mythical item that isn't really on its way.
Okay.
So, all right, let me check out to new user and go back. Okay, there are don't print. There is another discharge user. This is the fine free discharge, which basically, if there are any fines accruing on that account, it will remove those fines. Not on that account, I should say, on that item. It will remove the fines that are currently accruing. So if an item is 3 days overdue and you use the fine-free discharge wizard, it'll knock off those 3 days worth of fines. It won't like clear everything from their account. They, you know, may have pre-existing fines, you know, maybe even on that item, like maybe they had kept it late and then renewed it after it was already overdue. If you use this, it won't remove those fines that were already there from that late renewal, but it'll remove any fines that might be accruing now, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yep.
A lot of libraries are using this a lot right now because of quarantine. You know, they're not wanting to be inadvertently billing someone because the item was on time, but it's been quarantined for 7 days or things like that. So basically use this when you feel like you need to, especially at a school. You know, you're not going to run into a thing like a public library might, where, you know, people are going to learn that, you know, this library never charges fines. You know, you're basically just going to have your students, you're not going to have random strangers returning stuff to try to take advantage of it. So I would say, in your case, use the fine-free discharge wizard as much as you feel like you want to. Some schools, I think, use it pretty routinely, just because they generally only charge late fee, you know, only charge fees for lost items. So feel free to use it as you need to.
Okay.
The discharging book drop is kind of, it's like the special due date helper, but in reverse. This may be the one you may want to use if you had like a snow day or an unexpected closure. You could use this and use the little diamond thing to get your calendar icon and say, okay, these items are being returned today, but we were closed the first 3 days of this week. So I want to tell the computer to treat all these items as if they were really returned last Friday. And just click OK, and then it's just going to kind of mark those as if they were returned that day and take off, you know, any fines that had accrued between Friday and now, that sort of thing. So that's the one that can be handy if you've had an unexpected closure. You know, you didn't adjust the due dates in advance because you didn't know you were not going to be able to take returns.
Right.
So that's pretty much those, though. They're fairly straightforward. But you might get the same, you know, in transit pop-ups and hold notices and all that kind of thing on those. The next thing I'll cover is the renewal options. You've got several different ways you can renew items. The first way is just to check out the same item to the same user. It'll just pop up and say, this user already has this charged. Do you want to renew it? And you can just say, sure. Some libraries make a distinction between seen and unseen renewals, which would be like, seen is they actually brought the item into the library. I know it still exists and I've renewed it. Unseen would be like they called and asked for a renewal, you know, or something like that. I'd say most libraries don't make a distinction anymore and just, you know, click renew, this item is seen for everything. Some libraries may make a distinction. If you do, it's fine. You just want to be consistent about how you use it, because you can set up different circ rules as far as like on your circ map, you can allow like infinite seen renewals, but only 5 unseen renewals or something like that, you know. But I would say if you haven't worried about it in the past, I wouldn't recommend starting to worry about it, you know. Mm-hmm. So, you know, if we just say, okay, go ahead and renew, and then it just renews. The other option, though, is this renew user wizard. In this case, you can look up the user account and it'll show a list of what they have checked out. And then you can just select which ones you want to renew, or you can just click select all at the top, or only specific ones at the bottom. Either way is fine. So, and then just renew selected items, and then close once you're done, and that'll renew those items. Another thing that can be handy, especially if you are dealing with someone, let me actually do another checkout for her and set a special due date on it. Set something weird. Okay. Oh, that won't work. That's in the past. I can't do a due date in the past. We'll just go further into the future. Okay, I'm going to check something out with a different due date just so you can see how this works, because this may be handy if you have people who are checking out a lot of stuff. Looking at my bookshelf to get an idea. Okay. Yeah, that'll work. Why not? Okay. So I've got something checked out with a different due date. So if I go to renew user, Okay, so I've got 2 items that are due on the 28th and one that's due on the 8th. If you envision a situation where I don't really have only these 3 items, where I actually have, you know, maybe 20 items that are due on one day and 20 items that are due on another day, I don't want to renew these items that I just checked out now, because that'll use up one of their renewal turns and then they'll run into renewal limits and things like that. So I don't want to do those, but I might not want to go through and click 20 other items to select the other ones. So what I can do is I can use this helper, which is the limit list by due date helper. And I can say, I only want to see items that are due on or before, I don't know, September 10th. I say, okay. And that takes off those 2 that are due on the 28th and leaves me with just that one that's due on the 8th. And now, again, this is more useful if you envision a situation in which you have like 20 items. I can just click select all and renew those selected items. And now that one's also due on the 28th. So again, it's kind of hard to have a good example because I never have a test card with like 50 checkouts on it, but you may, you know, have a situation where you have a teacher in that situation, you know, who has a bunch of stuff in their classroom and you don't want to accidentally waste their renewal turns, because even if you don't really limit, even if you would let them do it, you also don't want to have to be like hitting that override every time you want to renew for them. So it can be kind of a pain. So, but it can be nice if you ever are in a situation where someone has a ton of checkouts. So we'll close that. Let me close a few windows here. All right. The next way to renew items is this Renew Item Wizard. And this is the one that is most helpful if you have a situation where a user comes in with a whole stack of books and says, I want to renew these, but they're for several different students in my class. I don't know which one's on whose account. So you're not going to want to try to look up everyone in their class and do the renewals. You're just going to want to scan all the barcodes in that stack of books. So that's kind of when I would use that. And you do, again, you have your special due date option. You don't have the limit list by due date because you're not going to be working from a list in the same way, but you could just scan your whole stack of books and it'll just renew those for the regular renewal period. So can be pretty handy. So that's basically all of the renewal options. Any questions about any of those?
I don't think so.
Okay, yeah, renewals are pretty easy. All right. So now the fun part is the billing part. It sounds like you don't do like don't worry too much about just late fines, but you do bill for lost materials. So I'll cover that. And there are there are 3, I guess, ways to create a bill. The first one is the automatic one, where the user just keeps the item too long and the system creates the bill because it has, you know, been however many days past the due date. So you don't have to do anything to make those happen. There's just a report that runs that, you know, makes those things lost after the set amount of time. The other way that you can create a bill is, and I don't know whether you would ever really use this, but I'll still show you how it works, is this billing a user wizard. This is for times that you don't want to remove the item from the collection, but you still need to bill a user. Maybe you have a student who has like a history of damaging items and you've been trying to work with them to, you know, not do this anymore, but you have finally gotten to the point where if it happens one more time, you're going to charge them a $2 fine or something just to kind of make an impression. I don't know. Or I'm trying to think what else you might need to do. Maybe you're doing a fundraiser in the library and you're selling world's finest chocolate bars. And for whatever reason, you've decided you want to use workflows to help track the money you take in from that. You may want to create bills that way. I don't know. Like I said, you may never use this, but you might, I don't know. So I'm going to use my same Jessica account here. And under the bill reason, you have this big list of bill reasons, you know, which includes things from the dark ages like rewind for when libraries used to charge if you return to VHS, not rewound. Or you've also got things, you know, like damage. You've got things like cleaning. You do also have ones that say lost. You know, some libraries use it if they have, you know, printing and faxing services. So again, this is another list that we can customize for you if you wish. Some of these things, like if I choose shipping cost, you'll notice it grays out the item ID because there's not going to be a library book associated with that. But if I choose rewind, it will require me to enter the item ID. The system won't let you just kind of ambiguously bill for something that would be connected to an item. You have to say which item you had to rewind. You have to say which item you had to clean, which item was damaged. But since I don't actually have any items, I'm going to choose one of the ones that does not require that. I'll do printing. And then I'll just say, you know, I had to print 50 pages for someone and they didn't have money on them that day, so I'm going to bill it to their account and let them pay it later. I don't know. Again, you might not use this, but
I have a question.
Yeah.
If the book it's a lost book, so you put in lost, then it asks for the item ID. Well, obviously I don't have the book in front of me, so
and in this situation I would not use this billing method.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, that'll be the next one I show you, because in that situation you're not going to have the item anymore, so you're not going to want it to stay in the catalog. Because the thing is, if I were to say like do it as a, I'll do a cleaning bill. We'll say I decided to charge someone $5 to clean the chocolate pudding off of a book or something. I don't know. I can look it up either by looking up the user account. Well, no, that tells me who I want to bill it to. Never mind. The other one works that way. Okay, cleaning, $5. I can use the item search to look up the item that I want to apply the bill to. We could say use that item in bill. And then I could add a note of, you know, cleaned chocolate pudding from cover. So you do want to add at least sort of a note about what it was. And then for payment type, you don't need to put anything in at that point unless you want to, you have this option to just apply the bill to the card, or you have the option to pay now. So if you wanted to choose pay now, you'd want to choose the correct payment type, but otherwise you could just bill the user and it just applies that bill to her account. And I'm just going to show you kind of how, if I look up this item in the catalog though, that item, it's still checked out in the regular location. It doesn't take it off the user's account. It doesn't move it to lost. So if this user, you know, pays this bill, that just comes off, you know, and nothing has changed about the account, the item status.
Okay.
Whereas if that item is truly lost and is never going to come back, I would want to go down to this items group and use this mark item lost wizard instead. So if I take that now and I'll use that same item and say mark item lost, and I'm just going to go ahead and bill that to the user. Now if I look that up in the catalog, its location has changed and it's no longer checked out. Now it's in lost claim. And that bill on the user's account, you know, it doesn't show up under checkouts anymore, but if I go to bills, you can see that lost thing on there. Or if I go to the user account,
okay,
it shows up under their bills as a lost item. So if the item's not coming back, you're going to want to use that mark item lost, because otherwise it still looks like that item is available. So you could like go in through that billing a user, you could put in the total cost of the item and all of that. But if the item's truly gone, it's still going to look like it's available in the system. So that's kind of the big difference between the two. So let's see. Let me think. Anything else I need to cover on that? Another nice thing on mark item lost, we'll say I didn't want to use this one. There are two different ways to look up the item, because by definition it's lost. Like you said, you're not necessarily going to have the item ID in front of you. You can also use this user checkout search, where you can look up the user and it'll show you a list of everything they have checked out. And you can choose the one or ones that you want to mark as lost, which can be an easy way to do it if you know, if the kid is standing in front of you and says, I've lost one of my books, I need to, my mom sent me with a check. You can look them up that way. Yeah.
And you started that with, because I was writing down.
Oh, no, you're fine.
You started with display user.
It's yeah, up here, this user checkouts thing, it's the same icon as the display user. Yeah. And you can just look up,
okay. So I hit that and then look for a student and then.
Right. And to me, that's the easiest way to do it, because that way too, you're billing for the right item. Whereas if you use the look it up method, you're kind of like, I hope this is the the book that I mean to look up, as a, because there might be, 15 different copies throughout the system, and you kind of want to, make sure, like, if you choose one that's just on the shelf, it'll pop up and tell you that item's not charged. I can't charge it. I can't bill it as lost. But if you happen to accidentally select one that's checked out to someone else, you don't want to bill some random other person for it. So that's kind of why I like that the look it up by user method better. But, again, that might not always be possible. So again, just kind of depends a little bit on the situation though, which one's going to be easier. Or sometimes you might have the book in your hands and it's just growing mold, and so then you do have the barcode to put in, and you can just do it that way. But whichever's easier. So then though, you'll notice, I'm going to pull her back up and look at her bills, and you'll notice it automatically applied the processing fee, which is based on that billing library. So whatever library is creating the bill, it'll apply the appropriate processing fee. I believe that's how it works. And then you still see my old, it didn't clear off that $5 cleaning fee, because that's kind of a separate bill. But if I had kept it overdue, it would clear off any overdues by marking it lost. So, and I'm gonna go through here again and pay off my imaginary fines. Okay. And the thing that is nice though, is again, once I've paid off those fines, that item is still in lost status. So, which is good, because presumably it's never coming back. If it did somehow come back, and since in this situation it's not really lost, I'm going to go ahead and do this. Let me actually jot down the item ID though, so I can get it out of transit later. Okay. If I discharge it, if I have something, that has been marked lost and it has now been found, all you have to do is use that discharge function, and it'll pop up with this big warning this item was lost. So that way you can go through, if you've sent the student notices, you can let them know it's come back if you happen to find it somewhere on the shelf or something like that. But basically, if you have any records that you need to clear, it'll alert you that the item was lost, and you just say, okay. And now, in my case, it's transiting back to the other library, but if it's one of your items, it'll just automatically be available and back on the shelf. So basically any time something's in a weird status, I mean, there are exceptions, but most of the time when something's in a weird status, all you have to do to get it out of the status is just discharge it. That'll get it out of missing status. It'll get it out of lost status. If it's your item and it was in transit to you, it should get it out of transit in theory. Every now and then you'll run into something weird, and if so, let us know. But most of the time, if something weird's going on, just try discharging the item.
Okay.
So that's pretty much that one. I feel like I may have gone too fast, but
that's okay.
I figure no one really minds if a training wraps up a little bit early.
Yeah. And it's probably easier when there's just one of us. So
it's true. Well, and the fact that we really covered the patron registration yesterday, which usually I do is, if I'd had more people, I would have done it as part of the training. But since I knew I'd already done it with you, that was kind of nice. But yeah, let me just peek through real quick and just holds. Are you coming to the holds training tomorrow?
I am.
Okay, we'll cover that then. Yeah, that's pretty much everything then. Awesome. Okay.
Okay.
I will show you real quick, just if you ever want to look to see the items that are coming to you. This pending transits will show you all the items that are in transit to you, and it'll default to for holds or even just things that are coming back to be shelved.
No, I mean, where's the pending transit?
Oh, in transit items, it's that very last group way down at the bottom.
Oh, okay. I found
it. And yeah, so it should default to your own library. If you look at the little house, you can see what's going to other places, which is what I'll be doing later when I get all the things that I returned that weren't really ever checked out. I'll be using that to find out where they were going and get them out of transit. But you can see all of those things. And again, you can kind of see some of that helpful info. If you click on it, you can see, all the other copies of it that are out there and things like that. It's just kind of a nice little tool. There's not a ton that you actually do in it, but for informational purposes, it can be handy if you ever need to see what's coming. And generally, actually, let me pull mine up again. You kind of want to keep an eye on it at least a little bit, and clear off things that have been, or try to locate items if something's been in transit since like March or something. You may want to see if you could find that item, see if it ever really arrived, or follow up with the other library to see if it ever got sent. Or we kind of don't want things just being in transit limbo forever, although in the current situation we've definitely had some of that.
Right. Yeah.
So we'll probably, once things, I don't know, settle down in some dim distant future, we may be sending around some cleanup lists, but to see if we can locate some of those items, but we'll see. So, but that's basically all of the circulation functions for today. Any questions or anything you've always wondered and haven't had a chance to find out or ask?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think you've answered.
Well, that's the goal, so that's good. But yeah. Well, and we'll see you again tomorrow, hopefully. So yes, if you think of any in between, let me know. And have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thank you, Anna.
Oh, thank you for joining me.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.